Welcome to the Beyond VPN section. My name is Mark Simos, Lead Cybersecurity Architect at Microsoft. Roger?
I'm Roger Halbheer, Chief Security Advisor at Microsoft, covering the German-speaking markets and the Netherlands.
So we're talking today about Beyond VPN. And it seems like it may be an odd way of talking about something in a reference architecture, but ultimately this is, VPN has become a significant security problem for a lot of organizations. And there's a couple different reasons for that. And we're going to go ahead and kind of break down each of those three reasons. The first one is that the authentication for VPN tends to be heavily password-based and sort of weaker, tends to be fairly basic. Advanced MFA oftentimes can be connected to it, but we do see a lot of use of radius and some insecure protocols that are used for it. So there's a lot of challenges with that. And so when you're talking about providing remote access, especially in a time like we experienced during COVID, where a lot of folks are remote or in a hybrid scenario where they're sometimes remote, you want to have strong authentication for that access to the corporate applications. The second challenge that we see is that the devices themselves are actually quite difficult to keep updated and patched. They don't often use an automatic mechanism like Windows Update that pretty much queues it up and says, are you ready to go? And then annoys you until you do it. So you see some challenges, and we've seen a lot of compromises with VPN devices because it's not simple and easy for them to be patched. So there's a lot of credentials effectively stored on there that could be stolen there. And then the third piece that is challenging about VPNs from a security perspective is that it typically allows full access to the network. Now, sometimes some extremely responsible and rigorous security programs have very carefully segmented out which users can get access to which segments or which applications. But for the most part, most VPNs that we see configured generally put people on the corporate network and allow them to connect to just about anything behind it. Roger, anything to add?
Well, the reason, I mean, you talked about, the whole home office challenges we faced. And it might not be a direct security issue, but I mean, scalability was a huge problem, especially when everybody was sent home. And it was, for me, interesting to see when home office started, and you look at the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad. Initially, it was all about availability. So the initial discussions were all about how we get Teams video out of the VPN tunnel, how do we do split tunneling and stuff like that. And finally, then it moved over to the confidentiality and the integrity part of the discussion. So the scalability issue came on top of it, way more than what you said.
And the other thing that we found, kind of keying into that user experience, is people don't like to log into a VPN because it usually requires a manual effort. And if you do have MFA, you have to MFA every time, as opposed to trusting the session that you're already on an authenticated computer, perhaps. And so that usability experience, the user experience of it, is often frustrating and creates friction for people that are just trying to get their job done and do it quickly.
So what I typically said when I was a CISO in the old days, and what I told my team is whenever we release technology to the end users, I'm going to bring you my mom and give you 30 minutes to explain her how to use the technology. Well, they reacted the same way until they figured out that I'm darn serious. But if I think about explaining my mom to open a VPN tunnel before you have the same experience as you have in the office, I don't want to do that seriously. So it uses, and it even gets worse on a mobile phone. If you have to add VPN to a mobile phone, this might be great for us with a technology background, with an IT background, but not for the average user.
Yeah, and it's so important that user experience for it, because the reality is a lot of business organizations and business units within an organization, they might just simply say, you know what, this IT stuff is too hard. We're just going to use this SaaS service, use our mobile devices, and we're done. Like, we don't want to have to deal with it. And so they have the option to vote with their feet or vote with their mobile devices and go around the system. And so it's really crucial for IT and security to work together to make that experience great, so that doing the right thing is the easiest thing.
Absolutely.
So the way that we recommend from a Microsoft perspective of how do you address some of these challenges, the first easiest low-hanging fruit is to simply use Azure AD for VPN authentication. So just about every VPN vendor on the market, I haven't seen one that does not have Azure AD support. Simply connecting it up and having it use Azure AD for authentication keeps you from having to store credentials on those devices if that's how the device works, and gives you that really strong zero trust authentication that validates the device explicitly to make sure that it's trusted before it's connecting up. And also the user account, using threat intelligence, multi-factor authentication, biometrics, passwordless is the ideal configuration of that. So you get all that strong explicit validation of trust up to and including that there's an EDR on that device that says it's healthy and not infected, right? An advanced tool that's saying that. So you get all of that security benefit before authenticating to it. So that's usually the first step that we recommend. That's the easiest for most organizations to modernize and upgrade their security for VPN.
Well, and it leads to one policy enforcement point, and I feel that this is one of the key, coming back to user experience, one of the key targets of most organizations. You need to have one point where you decide about your policy and how to enforce it, because otherwise you get a chaos. And coming back to my mom, you can't figure out why you don't get access.
And it's not just the users and your mom that have the challenges with it. It's actually security, because if you have inconsistent policy, someone's going to forget to make them synced up at some point if they're human. And then all of a sudden the attackers find a place that's weaker and they'll look for that crack and go through it. So that single consistent policy is critical from that perspective. And then the next step is start moving the applications that users are using off of the VPN so that they don't have to use the VPN to do it. And this is done by simply publishing those internal applications with a technology like Azure AD App Proxy. And so this makes it available through all the modern ways, like it would be through SaaS, through a portal, through a direct link, etc. And you can publish these internal existing apps and extend all of that strong authentication and usability, and pretty much automatically logging in if you're already logged in with Azure AD on your device, and just get straight through to the applications to that application through the proxy. And so this is a way to do it. Now, in order to do this, you need to know which applications, which ones are being used, et cetera. We find that a lot of organizations, including our own IT department at Microsoft, use the VPN logs to see which applications users are VPNing in for most, and then they use that as their burn down list, went for the most popular ones, so they could minimize the use of that VPN over time and start retiring the users and the applications off of VPN.
What we shouldn't underestimate if a customer goes that route is kind of the political earthquake you're causing if you have these discussions. I mean, since I am in security, we were protecting the network perimeter, and we were protecting the apps behind a gazillion of firewalls. I remember that I found situations where we had 10 firewalls which were crossed until you reached an application. I mean, we can debate about the value of those firewalls, but now all of a sudden you expose the application to the internet. That's one side. That's an emotional thing which creates fear with a lot of security and networking people. And the other one is you're shifting power within the org. A customer recently asked me, who owns the door to my organization? And if you stay with this picture, in the VPN networking days, it was the networking team. Now we are shifting this more into the Microsoft arena. And this is sometimes something you need to manage when you talk with customers. It's a change management process. It's an emotional process, which we shouldn't underestimate if we go there. Completely it makes perfect sense, but it's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, completely agree. And this is also part of the overall transformation, because as we get into this world of dynamic threats and dynamic business transformation and dynamic cloud transformation, organizations need to be much more flexible and be able to adapt and shift things to solve the problem at hand, instead of using sort of the old ways and the way it's always been done. So this is just one place where that happens of many as organizations modernize for modern attacks. And then the last piece for this is you want to have session security. And so Azure AD App Proxy can actually connect with the conditional access app control functionality that's built into Cloud App Security, which is integration between Azure AD and Cloud App Security. Either way, it's a feature. You checkbox it. Don't worry too much about the names. But you want to have session control. So, and what the session control does is just like you would, if you were connecting someone to and doing session control for software as a service, you want to use that same capability for these published on-premises applications. And that allows you to do threat detection, data leakage protection, data loss protection, and other sorts of information and insight from a security perspective on these sessions as they are connecting and as the users are actually using the applications. Now, of course, each application is a little bit different. They're not all RESTful APIs like a modern SaaS app would be, so you're not going to get the same exact level of control and experience over those existing legacy apps, but you can monitor those sessions for risks and for attacks. Any last thoughts, Roger?
No, basically, well, probably one last one when we talk about the app coverage, or two when it comes to the app coverage. One thing I often see when I talk with customers about that, they immediately start to think about the most legacy app they have in the environment. So just make it clear to the customer that this is a journey where we start with the easy ones and not with the very hard ones. And there will be a few which might remain on an application-specific VPN. And in the app coverage slide, we mention NTLM and LM hash and that kind of those authentication protocols as well. If we take assume breach serious, which we have to, and we assume that the bad guy is sitting on a network, they need to modernize these applications. So there's no way around that, because that's an inherently insecure protocol, which we know can be breached fairly easily. So they need to get off this protocol, and it's not something I hope we're going to support on AAD proxy. It's something they need to move off at the end of the day.
Yeah, and most organizations are migrating to the cloud.
Yes.
So they're already looking at these applications, they're migrating them, moving them to Azure, to AWS, to GCP, et cetera, or they're refactoring them completely, and as opposed to a lift and shift. And so as you do this, you should be looking not only at the application and sort of which authentication protocol it uses, and we do support through Kerberos, which covers a heavy percentage of most organizations, and we're looking at how to do more. But integrate this with your application plan so that as you're doing it, okay, which ones do we put in here? Which ones are we going to refactor in the next 6 months so we're not going to bother publishing them? And kind of work through that. And so again, teams working together. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this section. And this has been an overview of how to move beyond VPN and to secure it while you have it. Thank you.
Thank you.